Here we go. It's loading. All right, here we are. We're live. Well, thank you all so much for your patience. As you know, live streams can be very finicky, and we are now, as many people are, working from home, and so that makes this a little bit more complicated. And so I really appreciate everybody's patience with our getting us set up live, and we are very excited to have Dr. Deb Beck joining us today. Dr. Beck, for those of you who may listen to the episodes of the podcast, has been on the podcast several times already, talking about strategies for reapplicants and for non-traditional students. And today we're really proud to have her as part of our team. Dr. Beck is our new advising coordinator at the Texas Health Education Service. So, Dr. Beck, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Enrique.
All right, so for those of you watching on Facebook Live, we are going to be taking all of the questions that are coming into the feed of this video. So please feel free to send any questions that you have about the application process, about strategies. I know this is a very confusing time because the application is starting in about a little over a week. And then on top of all that, we have issues with delays or changes to processes caused by COVID-19. And we want to make sure that we are here to help you feel empowered to move forward in this application cycle. Dr. Beck, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we dig in?
Sure. I was recently the director of the Health Professions Office at the University of North Texas, also the Chief Health Professions Advisor there. And I was there for almost 20 years. And I really enjoy interacting with students and helping them through the process.
Now we get to amplify that energy to really impact so many more students on this platform. We're so excited to have you again. All right, so I'm sharing this in our Facebook groups, TMDSAS Hub and TMDSAS Non-Traditional Applicants groups. So if you all are joining us from there, welcome. We're really excited to see you. And we've already got a few questions coming in, Deb. So let's get started. Our first question, let's see, comes from Austin Black. And the question is, let's see. Is there such thing as too many activities? Love that question.
Yes.
I would have to say there might be a case of too many activities. In the event where you go out and you join every club on campus that has a pre-med or pre-dental or pre-veterinary society, and then there are 20 different variations of those, and there are honor societies, and there's just no humanly possible way for you to actually have been able to be meaningfully engaged in those activities. I think that's too many activities. What are your thoughts, Deb?
I agree. And it also may have an impact on your grades if you're involved in too many things. Quality over quantity is usually a better way to think of things. And join those clubs where you can do some community service or get engaged with the community or some area that you're interested in. The vet students, of course, animal-based activities. It's good if you can do some medical volunteer work. That's limited, of course, especially now. But Enrique's right. You can get overwhelmed, and those things are fun. But always the grades come first.
Absolutely. Well said. So we have another follow-up question on a different topic, actually. What is the best way to increase your science GPA besides SMP? I don't think I know the acronym SMP. Does that make sense to you? I'm gonna ask them to tell us what an SMP is, and we'll be happy to chime in. imagine some sort of post-bac program, but we'll let them chime in. Next question. Does the most meaningful events have to be medicine related? So this is in reference to the section of the application where I ask you to list 3 of the most meaningful activities. So you go through the application, you list everything since you've graduated from high school, every single activity that you've gone through, employment, healthcare, volunteer, extracurriculars, and you're asked to identify 3. They do not have to be medically related. In fact, it's probably more interesting if it's something that isn't medically related. The important thing, actually, I'll take that past statement back. The important thing in this meaningful activities section is that these are activities that you feel really contributed to your growth as a pre-health student and really contributed to your desire to want to pursue this career. And obviously it allows you space to speak further about those activities in the application. And if you have more questions about the logistics of how that works, we do have a session coming up on Friday on the TMDSAS page with our applicant liaisons. But I think the important part about that section is that you really use the space to talk about activities that are most important to you. And you know, it doesn't have to be medically related. It just has to be something that really gets you excited and you feel is something that the admissions committee should know about who you are. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I just will reiterate that these 3 questions, that's an opportunity for you to show your passion for something that you've done or a contribution that you've made to society or to your community. And it usually shows through your writing that you are very excited about it, as Enrique said, and it should show something about your character beyond what you've written in your personal essays.
Well said. All right, we have another question. I took my Mcat in March and was lined up to shadow all of April, but that obviously didn't happen. How poorly will this impact my application considering everything happening this year? Do you want to take that one or should we?
I'll start it.
Yeah.
It depends. If you have no volunteer or shadowing, rather, it's probably not the best thing. If you've waited this long to get some shadowing in, I don't know. Enrique, you want to jump in there? It's a difficult question.
I'm actually going to use the words of Dr. Judy Ann Kellaway, who said that one, you know, the application is a marathon. And one bad semester doesn't trip you up. I believe it should be shouldn't trip you up. And this fully goes in line with what you're saying, that you know, if you missed 1 month of shadowing, I mean, that's hard, but what about all the other months leading up to this? What kind of healthcare activities did you engage in? Volunteer activities? And even now there's so many new opportunities that have popped up that I think really need some attention by a lot of our pre-health students. And I think we both attended a session last week with some pre-health advisors from around the state, and they were talking about some of the activities that their students are engaging in. It's really powerful to hear how creative they've been throughout this process. And it really speaks to how they think on their feet. It speaks to their compassion for other people. I mean, just hearing about some of the new initiatives that they came up with, and just some examples. There was one student that they had mentioned that talked about how they created a local tutoring group for students, high school students in their area. You know, we have high school students who are about to take an AP exam in anatomy and missed out on about 2-3 months of instruction because of that. So you as a pre-health student may have the ability to help out that person in a tutoring setting. And it doesn't, you know, we're doing this via Zoom, via Skype. There's so many opportunities there. And then we also have folks who are making face masks at home who are learning to sew just for the fact that they're making face masks to help other people. There are other people who recognize some of their neighbors may not be healthy enough to go and get their own groceries, and so they're making sure that those neighbors are engaged and getting what they need. I actually saw one who, and I believe this was on Facebook, who actually set up like this visual color system with their neighbor. And so on their front window, the neighbor would post, if it's red, then they need something. If it's yellow, they're running low, or if it's green, they're good to go. And so it's a way for them to stay communicated and engage with each other without, risking each other's safety right now. Have you heard any?
There are some online volunteer groups like volunteermatch.org. They have a lot of opportunities, virtual opportunities. So there are a lot of online opportunities like that. I know that Meals on Wheels often needs people to just deliver food to people in need. The local food banks are crying for help. The United Way has opportunities in every town. Usually, the blood banks. Have you given blood or plasma? So there are lots of ways to be engaged in volunteer activities. I think part of that question, Enrique, may have been about shadowing. That's a tougher question because they won't allow you in the healthcare facilities. So that may be something that you'll just need to do later on when the restrictions have been relaxed a bit. They may be even more strict when this lets up a bit. So it may be increasingly difficult, and especially for the pre-dental students, because most of the dentists around here have limited their practice to emergency cases. So there's very little available. There may be more available for the pre-vet students, because I know that the veterinarians are considered essential services. So if you're a pre-vet, you may want to double check with them and see if they need volunteers to walk dogs or care for kennels and things like that. Or the local foundation for adopting animals. They're trying to get more animals out of the shelters too. So there's lots of opportunities for that, but you may just have to wait on the shadowing for medical and dental.
And then there are also, just to chime in with more opportunities, if you're bilingual, you have the opportunity to offer your services virtually via telemedicine. There are also some scribing services that are allowing students to scribe via telemedicine. It becomes increasingly important as doctors are seeing more patients right now. It's a changing world, and what's important is that you figure out ways to adapt to it. And I think the key factor here is going to be that creativity in adjusting to it. And if it's of any consolation, just know that you are not the only one in that case. You're in great company, because students across all health professions, across all education levels, are facing the same concerns and same issues. We've heard from other health professions, like pre-law students, who are pretty much stopped dead in their tracks because they're not able to continue forward with their education. So I think with pre-health, I think there are so many more opportunities that you just need to go out and think creatively about. And in terms of the Mcat, and I'm sorry we're dwelling so much on this, but obviously this is the big elephant in the room. In terms of the Mcat DAT tests, those have been pushed back. A lot of them have been postponed, and I know there's a lot of frustration about how few and far between we've heard from the AAMC about Mcat testing. Know that this is a constantly evolving situation, and when they have to reschedule a test date, it's not just, you know, going through and saying, hey, are you available this date? It's a global initiative. The test dates are global. And so it really is not going to move as quickly as you like it to. But just know that the schools are very well aware that there are huge portions of the applicants who have not been able to take their MCAT or DATs. For our veterinary applicants, the GRE is available for you to take online. So we're thankful for that opportunity. And, you know, we just have to try to follow along as best as possible and roll with the punches. All right, that was one question. Next question, is it appropriate to discuss GPA or Mcat scores in the optional essay? Of the application, I think that is, the optional essay obviously is optional for medical and dental applicants, and for veterinary applicants, it is, it's required. But I think the optional essay is an opportunity for you to discuss other parts of your application, things that you want the schools to know about you that you weren't able to discuss elsewhere. So if you think that there's something that the schools need to know about your GPA or MCAT, and there's no other place that you were able to describe it, the optional essay is a place to go. Dr. Beck, can you tell us about some of the advice you've shared on the optional essays?
Right. Generally, I recommend that people use that to describe a challenge that they've had or a time for growth, that maybe you faced a difficult situation and came out of it wiser. And so you can give some perspective on that, and maybe some of the coping skills that you used, because the med schools, dental and vet schools are looking for resilient people who can bounce back after something bad has happened, or, well, this challenge, the COVID thing. How are you handling that? And I'm not suggesting you need to write about COVID. And Enrique, I don't know, you may want to mention something about some of the COVID questions if they're going to be on the exam, or not the exam, the application.
Yeah, so just real quick, TMDSAS is not adding a question about COVID-19, but some of the schools that have secondary applications may add questions specifically about COVID-19, specifically about what you've done during this time, how this time may have transformed you or reinvigorated your passion for wanting to pursue this career. So just be ready for that type of question. Yeah, right back to you, Dr. Beck.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to reveal maybe that you have had doubts, or maybe the pandemic has made you think twice about going into medicine or dentistry because of the close proximity of working with people and some of the dangers that are associated. And on the other hand, how did you, since you are going ahead with your application, so you've decided that you do want to apply, and so why did you do that? And what made you decide that, even though in these critical times where the healthcare people, I know you must have seen those faces of the doctors all around, you know, even in Dallas and Houston, but those in New York were just heart-wrenching, of the nurses and the doctors and other healthcare professionals. So why is it that, you know, you still want to go into this profession where there are some very very strong dangers and to your own lives, and it could have a direct influence on what happens in your family as well? So I may have gotten a little bit off there, but I think that's important, because these can be times that you're really doing some soul searching, and we all should be doing that. And, you know, we hear the news people say every day, well, life won't be the same after this. They may be right. And hopefully stronger measures will be implemented in healthcare facilities. And that has a bearing directly on on who you are and what you want to do with your lives.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Let's see. We have another question about if you take a class after graduating and applying that's a prerequisite, do you need to send the updated transcript to all the schools you applied to or just the one you were accepted to? So it sounds like that we're talking about two different timelines here. If you take it for TMDSAS's purposes, you have to submit a transcript for every semester you complete throughout the application cycle. And so when you, before you submit your application to TMDSAS, you have to wait until your spring 2020 grades have been posted, and then you can submit your application. If you submit before and you have pending 2020 grades, your application will be sent back to you and you'll be asked to wait until your grades are released. So please avoid having that delay in your application processing and just wait until your grades are posted. Every semester thereafter, when you submit, you have to update your grades on the TMDSAS portal and send in your, you update your grades at the TMDSAS portal. Your transcripts starting this application cycle, you do not send those in until TMDSAS asks you to send those in. And so if you have transcripts, cool, collect them and hold on to them, but do not send them into TMDSAS because it will not be processed until they are until we prompt you to process them. And we don't have a place to put them. And so you want to make sure that you hold on and follow those instructions because it could cause a lot of delays in processing, or rather in validating your application later in the fall. But as far as right now goes, you update your grades, and that's what we send over to the schools. When validation begins in the fall, that's when TMDSAS will reach back to request your transcripts. All right. Is it a good idea to email schools after Mcat scores arrive? For instance, if a score arrives 3 weeks after submission or primary application. It's actually not required for you to contact the schools when your Mcat scores, for example, here are released to TMDSAS. TMDSAS creates an update to your application. So you submit your application, TMDSAS processes your application and then transmits it to the school. And then later after that, your Mcat scores come in, for example. Those scores are processed by TMDSAS, and then the system automatically sends that update to your application to all of the schools to which you've applied. And so the schools see that there's an update to your application, they download it and upload it into their systems so they see any updates that happen. The same thing happens with your course grades every semester. With any changes that happen to your application, these updates are coming out constantly from TMDSAS to the schools. And so you don't have to worry that if there's an update that you have to contact all the schools for the most part. There may be some specific cases, and that would actually be a great question to ask our applicant liaisons on Friday on what those specifically are. But in terms of Mcat scores coming in, that would not be a problem. Now, remember that for DAT scores, those are released to each school individually. And so you'll have to do that, but they'll receive the scores and verify that they have been received. All right, about 45 minutes ago when we got this question, we asked what an SMP is, and SMP is a specialized master's program. And so the question was, what is the best way to increase your science BPA besides doing an SMP? So I do want to go on a rant that is very common for me. TMDSAS actually doesn't produce one single GPA or 2 or 5. They produce, I believe it's like 20 different GPAs. We're looking at your undergraduate GPA, your graduate GPA, post-bac GPA, overall GPAs, and in all of those, we're also looking at your science GPA, non-science GPA, BZPM GPA, just so many different ways.
Semester also.
Yeah, and then it's done by semester and then by year.
Right.
There's just so many different calculations for your GPA. What's important is that as you are progressing academically from year to year, that you are showing that you have an aptitude for the sciences, and you show that you are academically capable of handling the rigors of professional school. As we mentioned, that the GPAs are split in every which way you could possibly think. It looks like Fruit Ninja, all the ways your GPA is cut. We are actually able to track how well you do semester over semester, year over year academically. And the same thing goes for all of your prerequisite courses. We're able to take those individually. Your BCPM courses, we could see what that looks like. And so the schools are seeing where those trends exist. And so if you are doing exceptionally well your freshman year and it's just continuously dropping, and we see that an overall GPA has a, it's a competitive GPA, but we see that it's competitive because your, let's say, dual credit courses are the ones that are propping you up. That's very easily caught by all of the schools because of all the ways that your GPA is spliced up. And so, yeah, increasing your science GPA is important, but more important than that is showing that you are constantly improving the sciences in your GPA and in all GPAs if possible. A quick word of caution is that for a master's program, a master's coursework will not count toward the prerequisites and will be calculated into its own GPA. So unless the schools are looking for an overall BCPM GPA, they might not see your graduate coursework sciences. And so a postbac will improve your undergraduate GPA, undergraduate BCPM GPA, but a master's program is going to be in its own category. All right. And thank you to everyone who educated us on SMP. That's a new one for me. All right, next question. If I have all the required prereqs for med school with A's, B's, C's, should I spend the next year taking an upper division science class a semester? I work full time. All right, I'll let you take that one, Dr. Beck.
I will say that depends. I'm a little bit prejudiced. I'm a microbiologist. That's my PhD was in that. So I like upper level courses. It doesn't have to be upper level biology. It could be, I think that the professional schools do like to see that you're keeping your brain engaged and that you're learning. So maybe it's an upper division sociology or psychology, something that you're interested in, maybe not basket weaving or something like that, but something that will engage your curiosity and will keep you thinking critically. And you don't have to, but if you don't need it for a required course or to graduate, I still think it's good to keep that the academic portion of your brain going. And maybe you're engaged in research or some other critical analysis thinking skills. So
I think the considerations there is because it sounds like this student may have already graduated and they're working full-time. They're just trying to show that they're still academically capable. Right. I think that would be a situation where you might consider taking some additional coursework just to continue that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you took an MCAT, say this past spring or late or early in the winter this year, rather, and you did exceptionally well, and you have a really competitive GPA in the sciences, then right. I think you could go off and go do some volunteer work to really boost up your application rather than coursework.
Right.
And those decisions are always down to the applicant. It depends on what you want to prove or what you want to show in your application, and the different competencies that you want to highlight.
Or maybe you are passionate about basket weaving. Take the basket weaving,
Yeah. there are plenty of opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, we make the opportunities we need. All right, next question. Referring to the application, when is it that there can be too many activities? Okay, so we have the clarification on too many activities. Thank you, Austin. I don't believe there's a limit on how many activities you can enter, and I know she's in here, so Sharon could probably attest that there is a quite a large amount of space that you can enter activities. So I don't think you have to worry that the application is not able to handle all the activities you have to throw its way. It's definitely been designed in such a way that you can enter everything that you need. All right, next question. Can scribing be a good substitution for shadowing? I'll let you take that one.
Oh, thanks, Enrique. It's not a substitution because a lot of the shadowing work is done in the emergency departments. Not always. Shadowing, I think one purpose of that is so that you can see what different doctors do and what life is like in the so-called trenches for different kinds of doctors. The scribing traditionally has been done in emergency departments. I know that other doctors are hiring scribes now. It's not the same thing, but I used to tell my students that it serves the same purpose, I think, because you get to work with the doctors, you get to see what they're doing, and that's really the purpose of shadowing.
Yeah, and just as a quick reminder, for those that have any scribing experiences, that is one of the few activities that you could actually enter in multiple sections for medical and for dental applicants. You can enter those in both the healthcare activities section and the employment section. And so if an activity is both a healthcare experience and an employment, you are able to enter that in both of those sections, but just make sure that the description is not the same. There are different elements that you pick up as both a healthcare experience and as an employment experience. And so make sure you're not copying and pasting the same description for both. All right, so we have a very long one coming up next. Here we go. We're going to do our best to answer, but I see several questions in here. If we are taking a gap year, should we write down what our original plans were? So I believe that's in reference to what the original plan was before taking a gap year, in which case I think it's more important what you've actually done than what you plan to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that and move on to the next question.
Mm-hmm.
There might be things we originally planned to do during our gap year, such as scribing, traveling, extracurriculars, but that seems uncertain and the lockdown situation continues for a long time. I know people who work as scribes currently that were sent home and only essential staff working in hospitals, clinics. Hospital volunteering has also been canceled. Yep. I'm worrying about writing something about my future plans, but not being able to actually do it due to the situations beyond my control. Any advice on what gap year students can do in the situation that they're unable to continue the activities they had originally planned? Okay, so that's a meatier question. I think we've addressed a few of those elements already in here. You know, there are plenty of opportunities for you to seek out any volunteer work. It might not be the exact same way that you had planned initially, but again, there are so many opportunities out there that there really shouldn't be anything that's stopping you from continuing the course of action that you had to move forward and you're applying on the timeline that you wanted to submit your application. If I decide to change to full-time scribing to increase my clinical experience, should I do other shadowing or do other things like research and volunteering?
It's good. You know, anything that you do is good. And it adds to your experience and your learning about different different aspects of the medical profession. So yeah, it helps. Everything helps.
Right. All right. Follow-up question to the transcripts discussion. Can you clarify how to send in our transcripts? Sure. So when you submit your application to TMDSAS, it actually goes through a group called the applicant liaisons, and this is the group that will be hosting the takeover of the TMDSAS Facebook page on Friday at 10 a.m. Central Time. And what they do is they go through your application to make sure that everything was entered correctly, that there weren't any technical issues, that all of your classes were coded correctly so that your GPA is calculated. GPAs are calculated, rather. And then it goes off to the schools throughout the application cycle as you take additional tests, finish different semesters, and submit updates to your application. You will continue to update your grades and work with your applicant liaison. In the fall, once the application cycle has closed, TMDSAS moves into validation. And what validation means is that they're going through and verifying that all of your courses match exactly what your transcript says. During that time and in preparation for it, that's when TMDSAS will reach out to request transcripts. And the change that happened this year to hold on to your transcripts until TMDSAS requests them is to allow TMDSAS to move in a more agile manner in processing applications and getting those to the schools. Those are top priority for our applicants and they're top priority for our students. I know it sounds weird that TMDSAS is invalidating your transcripts before they go to the schools, but the fact of the matter is that when you complete your TMDSAS application, you submit a certification page at the end of it. And that certification page says that you have completed everything fully and to the best of your knowledge, and you certify that everything is factual and correct as far as you're able to attest. And so we have to trust in all of our applicants that they are entering all of their coursework correctly. We have to trust that everything that you say in your application is correct. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. There's always someone trying to sneak a fast one. You know, they omit a semester or an entire degree that should have been calculated in there and they just omit it. The schools always find out. They always find out, and there are always a handful of students trying to get something through, and they will always find out. So first and foremost, be truthful in your application and follow the instructions that are posted by TMDSAS. And if you have any further questions about that process of the application, it's a great question to ask our applicant liaisons on Friday. All right, the AMC has delayed their application transmission for 2 weeks. Will TMDSAS follow suit? Well, TMDSAS actually established that several weeks ago, many weeks before the AAMC. As many of you know, TMDSAS is just a trailblazing organization. We were around well before AAMC, and we're moving a little bit faster than they are right now in terms of getting schools on board with different initiatives. The application cycle is going to still open on May 1st, but it will now close on October 30th. And that additional 30 days of the application cycle allows the schools more time for interviews, allows them more time for applicant review, especially considering how some of the test dates have been delayed, possibly into the summer. Those additional 30 days mean that TMDSAS will not transmit any application to the schools until June. So we are waiting for not just 2 weeks, but rather a full month before all of the schools start receiving applications from TMDSAS. So applying early is going to look a little bit different this year. We do encourage you to continue to push to get your application in earlier, but just know that that timeline is a little bit adjusted. Don't forget that you can submit your TMDSAS application even before your test scores are in and even before your letters of evaluation are sent in. You can submit your application. Once those letters, once those test scores come in, send the update to TMDSAS and they will update the schools for you as well. So hopefully that helps how awesome TMDSAS is. And I'm not just paid to say that. I fully believe it. All right. There's a follow-up question, I think, in some of the essays. Can we explain dips in our GPA in the personal statement? I'll let you take that difficult one, Dr. Beck.
Okay. You can. If you think that it's has to do with an important event or something that happened that had an influence on your grades, maybe there was an illness in your family, maybe you got hit, had a car wreck or something, and were having to, get rides to classes, and you'd broken your leg, and so there are extenuating circumstances that you might want to show in that essay, but always make sure that it's on a positive note and that it shows that you have grown from that experience. So something that you've reflected on and think that it will show your school that you want to get into, that you it will make you a better doctor or dentist or vet. So.
Well said, and that's actually we released an episode of the Inside Health Education podcast on Monday, and we talked to a professional writer about the hero's journey and ikigai, which is the reason for being, and we talk about how to really address events that happen in your life and figure out how to describe them in your application. So I highly encourage you to take a listen of that episode, because I think that might help you with figuring out how to explain specific situations that may have affected your GPA, because ultimately we want to hear your story and not what has happened to you. And so that's the most important part, I think.
Let me jump in here one more time, Enrique, about the personal essay. And even though it says personal essay, it doesn't mean that you have to tell very personal things about yourself. If it's relevant to making you who you are and why you want to be in the health professions, then by all means mention it, but there are ways to do that. And I see this especially maybe with the instances where people have lost loved ones, or if people have struggled a lot in maybe immigration instances. And of course, those are huge life events. But again, I can't stress enough, it should always have a positive slant to it and what you've learned from that.
Yeah, I've read a lot of essays where it's just like, I experienced a terrible doctor and I'm here to transform the entire field of medicine. It's like, well, I definitely feel for your situation, but realistically speaking, you're probably not going to be the sole catalyst to transform medicine. So, you could turn that and say, I've read this philosophy of medicine, I really like it, and I really want to continue that. So I did shadowing under a doctor who had the same philosophy, and here's what I learned.
Right. And also keep in mind your audience, who's going to be reading this. These are doctors who will be reading this. And if you're our dentists or veterinarians usually will be reading your essays. And if you're giving them what for, that's going to reflect badly or negatively on you.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have another great question here that's already been upvoted several times. Okay. Does a high GPA score offset a low, does a high Mcat score offset a low GPA? I think I might be the one to take that one. Mm-hmm. On the TMDSAS website, we actually publish what we call the Mcat and Gpa Matrix. And what it shows is, let's see, let me frame that. We have all of our Mcat scores and our GPA scores. And then we have a heat map of all of the students that were accepted at the different Mcat and GPA scores. And it shows you the most accepted GPA, or the highest distribution of GPA within the GPA, and the highest distribution of Mcat scores. And you see the combination of those. Mcat is very important, but it's not the make or break. and you'll see that in that form. I'll definitely post a link to it once this video is finished. I don't believe I have the opportunity to contribute to this discussion right now, but actually I do. I'll post it as a response, so you don't have to look around for it. But essentially, that distribution will show you how you know, a good MCAT score may allow the admissions committees to be a little bit more lenient with GPA and vice versa. All right, so we've got our next question. I missed the last part about GPA slicing rent. You said the master's program will learn. Oh, somebody answered that. Thank you. Can you enumerate many different community service activities that you did as an employee? This was over the span of nearly 10 years. I don't want to relegate it into one entry. You definitely could enter it as multiple different activities. Say sometimes your employer hosts like a you know, Habitat for Humanity Day, and everybody goes out and helps out, and that's something that you want to include. You're definitely welcome to include that as an individual entry on your application. Or if there are several smaller experiences, then you want to lump into one. Say, you know, you volunteered for 4 months at Big Brothers Big Sisters doing like paperwork or something, and it's just like a total of like 20 hours. You could bundle that up together. So you are able to make those distinctions. What I like to say is that you want to be cognizant that the schools do not appreciate at all any hour inflation. So be careful that as you're entering your activities, you're not making it seem that you're doing that for more time than usual. They will count up the hours and say, you know what, their activities here show that they are committed to like 120 hours a week, and there's just no human possible, no human way that would have been able to be accomplished. So yeah, just be careful with those. All right, so I already went ahead and posted the link to the GPA and Mcat matrix, and I'm also posting the DAT and GPA matrix for all of our dental applicants watching. And the next question, how do you classify EMT training, specifically the clinicals in the emergency departments and the ride-alongs with EMTs? You want to take that one?
No.
That's understandable. I think for EMT training, you want to enter that. It would probably be one of those instances where it's both employment and healthcare activity. And so again, just make sure that you don't use the same description for both, and talk one in the employment section, talk about what that employment experience was like, and in the healthcare experience, talk about what those experiences were like. If you want to separate your actual work as an EMT and your training as an EMT, that might be something that might be wise, because you may have experienced more things in your training than you have in your work as an EMT. But for the most part, again, you know, if you can defend where you put your activity to an admissions committee, you know, they're reading your application and you say, why did you put this here? And that's like the first question of your interview. If you're able to answer that, more power to you, and put it where you feel it best fits. Yeah. So we don't send transcripts at all until the fall. That is correct. No transcripts until TMDSAS requests them from you. How heavy do the letters of, somebody deleted the question. How heavy do the letters of evaluation weigh in on our application, or Mcat scores? I think that's a great chat about holistic review. Can you tell us about the four-legged stool?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, holistic review is looking at your whole experience in your life so far. So that includes your grades, your entrance exam, your shadowing, your volunteer activity, and research. It's more than a four-legged stool, but so they look at all your experiences, and how that has come together to make the person that you are. That's another reason your essays are important, is to show them your humanity, because you can't get that by listing things on an application. So I always thought that the medical schools, dental, vet, want to know, yes, even vet, want to know that you're a good person and that you like people, and that you have a good heart. That's it boils down to that, and that you want to take care of people and animals if you're a vet, but for dental and medical, that you really do care about the welfare of people and others.
Yeah.
So,
Enrique,
you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think your letters of evaluation are the third person perspective in everything that you've said. You've gone through and you've gone through 20 pages talking about how amazing, how wonderful you are, and how you're the best candidate that ever existed. And your letters of evaluation should be the place that reflects that. They talk about how great you were in your shadowing experience, or how amazing you were in your classroom, and how that professor really sees that you're going to be somebody that's going to pursue the sciences, or how your supervisor talks about how you were the best employee they've ever had, and they could totally envision you as becoming a healthcare provider for them someday. All these different things, you're making several arguments in your application about how you're the best applicant, how you fit the mission and the values of the schools, of the profession. And in the letters of evaluation, it's important to see those reflected. And so when you request your letters of evaluation, there is a really awesome guide published by the AAMC about all of the core competencies and what the schools look like for all of you dental applicants. For all you medical applicants. For dental applicants, check out the mission statements, and also for the veterinary, check out the mission statements and the value statements for the schools, and pick up on some of the key words that they keep emphasizing throughout. They're not just empty words for these schools. They have to defend these every year to the legislature. They have to defend them and how they're implementing them to their accrediting boards. And so that's what they look for in their students. And so you want your evaluators to really be able to speak to how amazing you are. As far as
Enrique,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm going to talk about
Sorry,
MCAT
I went off on a tangent there. I wasn't on your beam. But about the letters of evaluation, if you're in a big class of 150 to 200 people and you need a letter from that professor, make sure you go to their office hours if possible. Now, if it's an online class, I know that's more difficult, and I don't know how you make connections one-on-one in an online class. I haven't taken one. So you may be able to figure out something there if you can have one-on-one sessions with that professor sometimes. Another thing is to provide them information about you, so that they don't have to just say, yeah, they came and sat on the front row and they asked good questions. Yeah. Let them know something about you, your resume, or maybe your HPAC, your Health Professions Advisory Committee, has a questionnaire that you have to fill out for that process. You can provide that for your professors and your doctors, for that matter, or dentists or vets. I have had students say that the vet that they worked for told me to write the letter and they would sign it. I don't recommend that. It's not honest, and it's just not recommended. So, but make sure they know who you are as a person and all the good things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's on you as the applicant to train your evaluators on what it is that the schools need to know about you, and what it is that you want to share about your experience with the schools. And so, telling your evaluators with far enough anticipation that you want them to be your letter writers is really important. I don't think, and you've been a professor, I don't think there's anything wrong with, first office hours of the semester saying, hey, I would really like for you to write me a letter of evaluation next year. I'd like to come and chat with you during office hours and, update you with what I'm doing, and so that you know who I am by the time that letter comes due.
Yeah, and you might even be able to do some research in their lab or in their class. It doesn't have to be a science course. And most professors in universities do research. The psychology, sociology, kinesiology, they all do research.
Yeah.
It may not be a wet lab or something, but it doesn't matter.
Yep, the method's the same.
Right.
All right. And as far as Mcat scores go, we've talked about that a little bit during the session, especially when looking at GPA and Mcat and how those come into play. I think the important part is that you recognize that there is holistic review that the schools practice. However, to get to that holistic review, you have to prove that you're academically capable. You can't just show up with a 2.5 GPA and a 480 Mcat score and hope to get in. You really have to prove that you are academically capable, and then all of your activities come into play and all of your experiences and your essays and your evaluations. So your coupon to get fully reviewed is going to be your academic aptitude. And the way that you prove that, again, is going to be through your GPA and through your Mcat score. But I think more so that's going to come into play via your GPA. And you'll see that in those distributions that I shared earlier in this discussion. All right, next question. We've got we went a little bit late, but we're at 57 minutes right now. So we're gonna stick around. I'm gonna go ahead and we have a couple of questions. We're gonna just have to do some rapid fire. Again, for those of you all watching, TMDSAS is having a similar takeover of their of the TMDSAS Facebook page on Friday at 10 a.m. Central Time. So we're gonna rapid fire these as best as we can. I know that's a huge challenge for both of us since we both get on our soapboxes.
All right.
All right. Oh no, I'm just as guilty. What if my school is not listed on the website? How do I compare my classes to what is required? I believe you are referring to the course listings posted on the TMDSAS website. If you read the fine print on there, you recognize that those are not a way for you to plan your coursework. They are retrospective. They are not looking forward. It's what TMDSAS has already seen in other applications and how those have been evaluated, and in which section you should enter those in your application. They are not meant for you to go in and select future courses. If your school is not listed on there, it does not mean that TMDSAS does not recognize your school. It just means that you are attending a school that is, I think we've only gone through about 10% of all applicants. And we're going from the top feeder school for all of the TMDSAS schools and working our way down. We've just started to crack into some of the community colleges. And so we really appreciate your patience as we churn these out. Currently, there are about 500 schools that are represented in our course listings. And next week, we are actually launching a brand new version of the TMDSAS website. And we'll continue to update that one as well with all of the additional course listings. But again, just be careful with those course listings. Those are not meant as an advising component or anything that helps you decide which courses should work for you. A lot of courses that are posted on there may no longer be available or may no longer count to what they previously did, in which case those course listings will be updated accordingly. That was me attempting to give a short answer. We have another one. I've had a hard time finding time to get experience in medicine, shadowing, or otherwise, as I've worked in the service industry my whole life and trying to raise a small child while going to school full time. How much does it impact my application of my volunteer opportunities are all generally community service, such as the food bank? Thanks tremendously for your time. Forgive me, this is a double post. I don't use Facebook Live very much. No problem. This is actually not a double post. I think your situation is a little bit unique compared to what we've addressed so far. I think what's important, and we've definitely alluded to this in other responses, is that you know, whatever experience you have, there is a way that it connects back to becoming a healthcare professional. If you're in the service industry, let's say let's say a barista at Starbucks, you know, they have to deal with people, they have to communicate, they have to work in a team. All of those are core competencies that have been listed by the schools. Talk about those, talk about how you've honed in on those experiences and those attributes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that you don't have as many hours as the next person. Each person's situation is unique, which is why we don't publish how many community service hours or how many volunteer hours go into it. Each person's situation is unique, and becoming a healthcare professional is not cookie cutter. We don't want cookie cutter doctors or veterinarians or dentists. We want people who are willing to help other people with their skill sets in the sciences. And so keep that in mind. Don't fret about that, especially right now with how difficult it is to get through those. And really rest assured that the schools recognize that some people don't have the same opportunities to get every possible experience. With that said, if your volunteer opportunities have connection with the sciences and you have any opportunity to get some shadowing in, get some experiences in, I would highly recommend it. But it doesn't have to be a prolonged experience. I know I've heard some of the deans saying, you know, some people it takes 200 hours of shadowing to know that this is the path they want to go to. It takes other people 40 hours of shadowing and they know that this is what they want to do. And that's really comes down to who you are, what your process, what your life experiences are. So just know that it's a fluid process, and the schools recognize that not everybody's able to get the same experiences. All right. Do LOEs only have to come from professors? I've been in and out of school 13 years and do not really have a strong relationship with any of my old professors. I'll let you take that one.
Okay. No, it doesn't have to be professors. They may not even be alive, you know, the ones you had that can come up. It's your supervisor at work. It's a volunteer coordinator where you may have volunteered. Some recent experience or someone who can vouch for your character and how hard you work and your resilience and your competency and all those good things and what a good person you are.
Yeah, that's what's key. All right. Penultimate question, second to the last one. What is the difference between taking courses at a university versus community college? Oh, that's a hard one. We're going to skip. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
There is not necessarily a difference between university coursework and community college coursework. Some schools, unfortunately, still prefer that your coursework be taken at a university. You'll have to go and research what those schools are. They're constantly shifting. Right now, TMDSAS has come together as an organization with all of the participating schools and have agreed that for spring 2020, all pass-fail courses, credit, no credit courses, and online courses will be accepted for spring 2020. Online courses will be accepted as well for summer 2020. And we're trying to get that exception for pass-fail or credit, no credit courses for the summer as well. Again, the schools are meeting weekly right now with TMDSAS to discuss updates to these policies. So make sure that you continue to check in on our newsroom for TMDSAS, and I'll post a link to that here. But I believe your question is broader than the current situation, and all I can really say is that you know, it really depends. Some community college coursework is accepted. The schools recognize that not everybody has the opportunity to take a full course load, financially speaking, at a university. But you want to make sure that, you know, the onus is really on you as the applicant to make sure that you're getting out of those classes what you need as a pre-health student. A lot of times you go and you take biology, and it's, you know, whatever biology at X community college, and everybody just has to take it because it's part of the core curriculum. And unfortunately, that course is not really built in such a manner to establish the base level for the sciences for a pre-health professional. And so if you do end up going to community college and that's the only option for you, I urge you to seek opportunities to show other ways of academic aptitude. Again, that's a really important aspect in your application. And again, not every school is going to say no to online community, to community college courses. But just be aware that there still seems to be a stigma against community college courses, unfortunately, and we're working hard to fight that. But it's probably in your best interest to seek opportunities to make sure that you have what you need as a student, to make sure that you are able to do well on your entrance exams, the Mcat or the DAT, that you're able to handle the academic rigor of jumping straight into your first year curriculum. You know, don't just take community college coursework because it's easier, quote unquote, because it isn't necessarily always easier. But I think the important thing that the schools do have to recognize is that a community college course isn't always built for a pre-health student. Now, some are, and kudos to them, but I think for the most part, at a community college, it's on you as the applicant to make sure that you can handle the rigors of professional school. Anything else to add up to that, Deb?
No, I agree.
Okay.
And you will have other opportunities to show that you can handle academic rigor in those upper level courses when you finish your degree at a 4-year university.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have our last question. What is the average number of activities listed? Again, we don't have that number. We don't want to send a message that you have to complete X amount of activities in order to get in. The important thing is that you are completing the activities that are important to you, that you are engaged, and again, that you're showing the characteristics that you want to, and the aptitudes that you want the schools to really recognize and connect with in the review of your application. So there is not a general number for that. All right. And we have one last question. This is the very last one. It's from Ileana. Tips for building relationships with admissions offices. I've heard that it helps to have a relationship with the admissions committees. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I believe it's in you. You know, each school has a Facebook page. Each school has, right now they have online webinars about what they like to see in students. I can highly recommend Club Pre-Med, hosted by the Long School of Medicine, and they host monthly webinars with Dr. Kellaway. They recently had one on the personal statements. They've had some bringing folks on to talk about MCAT preparation, talking to current students at Long School of Medicine about their experiences. Each school has something that they're doing to put feelers out there to make sure that students are engaged with what they do. Typically speaking, we do have like health professions events. We had the AAMC recently hosted a virtual fair, and all of the TMDSAS schools participated in that. I believe ADIA is hosting a similar virtual fair, or recently did one, and all of the dental schools from Texas were there. And currently, I believe this Friday, the VMCAS was hosting another virtual fair as well for their veterinary schools, and the Texas A&M Veterinary School is participating in that. So there are opportunities for you to connect with the schools and get a feel for who they're looking for. As far as building personal relationships with people at the schools, I wouldn't hold my breath too much on that. And you don't want to seem disingenuous in talking to people, or like trying to leverage a relationship with them to get you in. What's important is that you are confident in what you've done in preparation, and that you know what you bring to the table, and that you've done your research that that school is going to be a good match for you. and promoting that argument in your application is really what's going to help you get it.
Can I add one thing to that?
Please.
And work through your own school's advisor, if you have one. And many schools have an HPAC or a Health Professions Advisory Committee that you can take advantage of, and they help you through that application process. So go through them first, or it may be one professor at your institution who helps students with their letters and their essays and things like that. So take advantage of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we reached our last question. We did it, Deb. Virtual high five. Thank you all so much for all of your thoughtful questions. I really, when we started this initiative, we weren't really sure what a response we'd get. And moving virtually is a little weird right now for so many of us. So we really thank each one of you for your engagement and for your really thoughtful questions, keeping us on our toes. And we will host other events like this where Deb and I are in conversation, answering your questions. And I would like to remind you all that on Friday, TMDSAS has a takeover by their applicant liaison team. And we will be sharing the applicant workshop video for EY 2021 that'll walk you through the entire application and what the schools are looking for, how to fill out different sections, and what you should worry about, what you shouldn't worry about on the applications. It's going to be really helpful for so many of you. And our team is going to be there ready to answer any questions that you have. So if you have any follow-up questions, we definitely recommend that you join us on our online communities. We have the TMDSAS Hub and the TMDSAS Non-Traditional Applicants groups. We're both very active on there, and we have a huge team of advisors, admissions committee folks, experienced students who are now in professional school that are ready to help you. So there are plenty of resources available for you to get your questions answered. So thank you so much, Dr. Beck, for all of your help with this. This definitely makes it a lot more fun. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.